What's up, YouTube family? You are back on the other side with me, Mike G, and tonight I'm bringing you an interview with a man who is probably the most prolific manager and promoter in the sport of MMA. Monte Cox, how are you doing tonight?
Having a good time.
Awesome, man. Tell me about growing up in Indiana, I believe it was. What was family like coming up in the Hoosier State?
Well, I didn't get to Indiana until I was a freshman in high school. My father was in the service, so
Okay.
I was born in Florida. I lived in Arizona, Minnesota. I lived in France. I lived in Italy for 4 years. I lived in
Wow.
Michigan. I lived everywhere. But my dad retired, and my freshman year in high school, I was in Indiana. Finished high school there, stayed and went to Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana.
Okay.
Stayed there and became the sports editor of the Muncie Evening Press. And then from there, I got a job. 10 years I was at the press. I got a job with the Quad City Times in Davenport, Iowa, and that's where everything kind of started. As far as moving from newspapers into MMA.
I read a story about how you ended up promoting your first event while you were at the paper still. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Well, it's pretty funny stuff. I was still the sports editor and news editor of the Quad City Times, and I was helping do boxing. And then they talked me into doing my first MMA event, and I didn't want it to be from the editor of the paper because it's just too much of a conflict. And so
It was
I
pretty controversial back then, MMA.
yeah, it was, and I actually had a friend, Tom Huggins, who was talking to us. He was from Atlanta, and or maybe he's from Florida, I think. And I had him come up and do the press conference and everything as the promoter
Okay.
instead of me, just so I could stay out of it. But
Hmm.
there came times. At one point, I put out a poster, and it had one of the Mark Hansen, who was a Davenport police officer, and it had him on the poster. Well, the chief of police called our newspaper and said, "Hey, who's promoting this thing? I got a problem." So my reporter told me, "Hey, do you know who's promoting this?" And I said, "I do." I go, "I'll take it." And so I took it and called back the police chief when he during lunch left a message saying I was Fred Byrne, different voice, but Monty Cox is helping me. And so when he called me back, I found out he didn't want me to say Davenport police officer, and I said I'd take care of that. But I dodged a bullet. I almost got found out that I was the promoter. So,
That almost sounds like an extremely elaborate version of the high school. I'm staying at your house. We'll tell them you're staying at
yeah,
my
yeah,
house.
exactly.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, that first fight, who was the main event in that very first show? Can you remember?
Actually, it was a tournament. We did a
Okay.
lot of tournaments, and it was Pat Miletich was in a 4-man tournament, and Mark Hansen was in a 4-man tournament, and I just put those together to see because I didn't know anybody. I had
Right.
a few guys I had seen in Pat's first fight in Chicago, but I was just guessing and putting them together. So Pat was the big draw. We drew 8,000 people to that first show.
Wow.
Yeah,
Where
it
where
was
where was the
crazy.
show held?
When?
Where was the
Oh,
location, the
it,
arena?
it was held in place then called the Mark of the Quad Cities. It was a 10,000 seat arena that had just opened up in Moline, Illinois, right across the river from us. And when Pat talked me into doing the show, I said, if we're going to do it, we're going to go big. So I made
Sure.
it like it was a monster, and people turned out. My wife and I were headed to the show, and fairly early, and we got stuck on the bridge, the I-74 bridge, and I'm like, God dang it, what's going on here? And there's so much traffic. We were at a standstill, and as we got to the middle, I'm looking over, and I could see all the cars going off the bridge and going down to the Mark and turning in, and I realized, holy cow, it's us. These are all our people going to the show. So I didn't know how many people we'd have. I knew it would be in the thousands because Pat sold a ton of tickets,
Sure.
but we ended up with 8,000 people.
Wow, that's amazing for a first show. Do you think there's anybody else out there in the business that can say they did an 8,000 person first show?
I don't think so.
I don't
I
think
don't
so
think
either,
so.
man. That's pretty amazing. Were you at that moment? Did you become hooked on the idea of promoting and possibly managing, or did that not really happen till later?
No, but I was hooked on promoting. I made over $200,000 in a weekend, and as a
That'll
newspaper
do it.
editor, I've made half that in a year. So I was pretty into it. But let me tell you how this all started. I'm sitting in
Okay.
my office, and I get one of my reporters says, "Hey, there's a guy on the phone that says one of the local guys going to Chicago. He's going to fight in a show with no rules, no time limits, no weight classes." And I didn't know anything about cage fighting at the time.
Sure.
This is before UFC 3, and
NHB.
so I go, let me take the call. So I'm talking to the guy, and he's telling me this. And I go, come on, this is crazy. I go, give me the guy's number. So he gives me the number. I call, and I start to ask him what's going on. The guy says, look, come down to the gym. Let me show you what we're doing, and then if you want to write a hatchet piece, go ahead. But let me show you. So I said, that's fair. So I go to the gym. They show me wrestling. I live in Iowa. Everyone wrestles.
Hmm.
They show me boxing. I box, so I get it. Then they showed me jujitsu, and honestly, it was like voodoo. I didn't
Hmm.
know anything about it, and they put me in chokes and holds, and I was like, oh my god! I mean, and my eyes opened to this.
Yeah.
And he said, now imagine two guys that train in all of these things going against each other. And I go, dude, I'm sold. I'm going with you to Chicago. I want to see it. So we go
Yeah.
up to Chicago, and our local guy runs through all three guys, crushes them, wins an 8-man tournament. And that local guy was Pat Miletich. And
Hmm.
that's when I met him. And then he goes, look, he knew who I was from promoting boxing and stuff. And that's
Hmm.
when he talked me into putting on the first show. And he told me, yeah, I'll sell 1,000 tickets. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I've had tons of people tell me 1,000, they sell 50. And
Hmm.
I took the tickets to his gym. I gave him 200 to start with. The next day he goes, those are gone. I need new. So I took him 500. 2 days later he goes, I need more. He ends up selling out of the gym 4,000 tickets for
Wow.
the show. And then we walked up, a bunch plus other people selling. We end up with 8,000.
Wow. And this was slightly before the Militich Fighting System Camp heyday.
Way before.
Way before. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Um,
It was January of '96.
how did you end up managing most of the guys from Militich?
Well, I mean, once this happened, once I put on the show, I had the only show going on. I was the first in Iowa, the first in
Hmm.
Wisconsin, the first in Nebraska, the first in Utah. I mean, I was taking it everywhere, and we were drawing big crowds. I was outdrawing the UFC by far. They were drawing
Awesome.
2,500. I'm drawing 6,000, 7,000. And so I'm doing the shows, and people, are wanting to get in the shows. They're calling me, and I'm saying, Pat Miletich has the school, and so people start gravitating to Pat to get training, and then they're in my shows, and so we're working together. Although we're not really together, but we're working together.
Hmm.
And then once I got Pat into the UFC, everyone says, who got Pat in the UFC? And they go, well, Monte Cox did. So I started getting calls from all over the country, guys like Jens Pulver driving in from California just to be managed by me and
Wow.
stuff. So I started managing. That was my first, and I was doing the promoting. So it was a package deal. You move to Iowa and you get Militich training, and you
Hmm.
get my management and my events. And we created something really special.
Yeah, I honestly don't think it's something that we've seen ever since that the Militich fighting system. Um, what did they have? All but one belt at one point in time in the UFC.
Well, it's kind of a misleader there.
Okay.
There's a difference. Militich Fighting Systems had its champions, but my team, I call them Team Extreme, included guys other than
Okay.
just Militich. I managed people all over. So at one time, I had 4 champions. It was Tim Sylvia's heavyweight, which was Militich,
Mm-hmm.
Rich Franklin at 185, not Militich,
Right.
Matt Hughes at 170, Militich, and Sean Shirk at 155, not Militich.
Okay.
So when he had the four, two were Pat's, two were mine. Well, all four were mine. But that's, I've had 9 UFC champs, but Miletich has had, even counting him, Jens, Tim, and Matt. He's had 4.
Okay.
So that was a little. People always thought everyone, because they were with me, they were with Pat, but that wasn't necessarily the case.
Okay. What is it? What year did you have a fighter in their first UFC? When was your introduction to the UFC as far as promoting a fighter?
Oh, it was the 4-man tournament for the lightweight title with Miletich and Townsend Saunders and Mikey Burnett,
Wow.
and a guy from Russia. I want to say it was UFC 19 or 21, one of those in there. It was in New Orleans, or in Louisiana, but I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head, but somewhere around there. It took a while to get Pat in there because they were all heavyweights. And
Right.
then when Peretti took over as the matchmaker, we were in tight with Peretti. And
Okay.
so John would come out to my shows and scout guys. He'd come to Indiana, see our show, and look at 3 guys he liked. And the next thing you knew, we had 3 of those 3 guys are in the UFC, all
Right.
through me. They'd call me and I'd set it up.
I've always wondered. I've heard Dana and other people talk about it. I'd like to get your opinion on it. When UFC was almost completely wiped out, when John McCain was trying to push legislation, and there was only a couple states in the country that you could put on a show, how scary a time was that? How did you ever really think that the MMA would come to an end? What was that time period like?
When a lot of that stuff was going on with McCain and stuff, I was just getting started, and because
Okay.
those are the original ones, and that was not Dana. That was 7-4 Entertainment.
Okay.
But I was able to get, because I had been doing boxing. I knew all the athletic commission people, so I
Okay.
was able to, wherever I went, to talk to the commission, and they would let me put on my shows. And they would say, "Now this isn't like that UFC, is it?" And I go, "No, no, no.
No,
This
no.
is shoot fighting," is what I called it. I said, "We have rules." He goes, "Yeah, I hear that UFC doesn't have referees or anything." And I go, "Well, I think they do." I go, "But ours is different." So they let me put it on, and that's why we drew so well. There were very few shows in the country. Maybe Hook and Shoot had started right when I did, a little, maybe before, maybe after. The Super Brawl out in Hawaii they started like 2 weeks before me. TJ Thompson did, and but like King of the Cage came 3 or 4 years after me.
Okay.
But there weren't many going around, so wherever I went, people didn't come to watch the individual fighters. They didn't know them. They just said, the cage fights are here. Let's go check it out. And that paid off handsomely. I mean, we drew some big crowds.
Wow, I can't imagine. I've never been to a large MMA show, and one day I'll get to go, but I kind of miss the fact I'll never get to see one of those early shows. I imagine the atmosphere was quite a bit different than T-Mobile Arena.
No, it's just unknown. You didn't know.
Yeah.
We did parade of athletes. So before they fight, we'd walk them all out around the cage just so people could see what kind of people were there. And they'd all look and they go, "Oh, check that guy out." I mean, we had a guy, Rick Gravis, and they had a bone through his nose and a long ponytail. And, you didn't know what you were going to see.
Sure.
And so, people, are going like, "Oh, I'll bet that guy's really good," and that kind of stuff. So we'd parade them all out there and back to the locker room and then start the show.
That almost sounds like a wrestling persona.
Kind of, but you wanted to get the crowd excited. You wanted to get the vibe, so you wanted to see who these guys are.
The early 2000s coming towards 2010, the UFC was getting huge quickly. During that point in time, if you had to pick a favorite moment, let's say either someone you were managing won a title, maybe your favorite fight ever happened in the UFC. When the UFC was going through its huge expansion, what was that like for you as a promoter or manager?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the guys that I was managing, we were fighting for $500, 500 and 500, things like that. All of a sudden, my promotion, which was doing great still, was no longer making as much money as my management. The management I took on just as a side thing because I didn't like the way some other people were taking guys out of my shows and taking them to Brazil and getting them crushed. And I said, nah, I'm done with that. I'll handle it. And so that became a focal point. Two biggest fights I've ever seen for me in UFC. One is a lot of everybody's favorite is the Matt Hughes and my gosh, how can I not? Oh my gosh, they fought twice.
BJ Penn, GSP.
No, they fought twice. He almost was choked out, and he picked him up.
Frank Trigg.
Yeah, Frank Trigg.
There we go.
Yeah, my wife just yelled Trigg. Yeah, they that was one where I thought it was over. He was choked. His face is turning color, and then all of a sudden he just did what Matt does, and he, got around, got out of it, picked him up, ran him across the ring towards us, and slammed him, and that was one of the all-time thrills.
Yeah.
The second big one was I was very good friends with Roberts, with not Tyrone, but gosh, why am I drawing
Daniel?
Andre Roberts.
Andre Roberts.
And 400-pound, Meskwaki Indian. And I had gotten him in the UFC, and he got hit and got his nose broken against Gary Goodridge in his first one, and he quit. And he didn't even realize when he waved it off he was quitting. And he was, oh no. So he's fighting Ron Waterman, and Waterman's a monster, and Waterman's kicking his butt pretty good. And he breaks his nose, and the ref comes over. He goes, your nose is broken. You want to quit? And he goes, not this time. And he came back and landed a big shot and then a knee and knocks out Waterman to win. And I mean, I don't show a lot of emotion during fights because I'm a newspaper guy. You can't be in a press box jumping up and down.
Right.
But I was jumping up and down for that. That was one of my all-time favorites.
That's awesome. The Matt Hughes Frank Trigg fight, that moment that you're talking about where he picked him up and carried him all the way across is so iconic. That's probably happened 5 or 6 times since that moment, and I guarantee you every one of those guys, as they were picking him up and starting to walk, was remembering Matt Hughes doing it when they did it. Yeah. And that's probably the only reason they did it, because no coach is going to encourage that.
Well, we ran him over to our corner. I mean, it was intentional. I mean, he picked him up and he looked around, he sees the corner, and he wanted to fight in his corner. He's still thinking, so
that's awesome.
Pretty smart.
Okay. You were in it early enough that you remember NHB.
Of course.
Were you a fan of the unified rules? Did it not matter to you? Did you like NHB better? What was your opinion on that?
I was so happy when the rules came about. I mean, because I'm making a lot of money. I'm really into the sport. I'm spending so much time in it. And if it continued the way it was going to get blocked. I mean, it was going to get shut down. You can't go with those rules. When they got together with the New Jersey Commission and stuff like that and wrote rules, so relieved. Now we're legit. I mean, I'm no longer going to places being treated like a carny, like, hey, the circus is in town, and that's how I got interviewed. I mean, I get interviewed everywhere I went, people saying, how do you feel about putting this on? This carnage and stuff, and no rules. And, they didn't even know the rules. But when we came out with that, I was glad.
I would also assume that from a business standpoint, if you're representing a fighter, the less beat up they get in each fight, the longer their career is, the more beneficial it is to both of you.
Yeah, well, and of course, your fighters become your friends.
Exactly.
You don't want to see anybody hurt.
Right.
So the safer it got, the better it was.
Absolutely. 2009, you're at the top of your game. Your fighters are at the top of theirs. And a tragedy happened. If you don't mind, can you share with us a little bit about what happened?
Sure. At 2009, that was shortly after I had 4 of the 5 UFC champs. I probably had 20, 25 people in the UFC. I was doing shows in Japan, working with Rings. I had a show called Rings USA. and I was taking guys there. We were all over the place. I mean, I was really on top of of the thing. And
Mhm.
and one night in January, um, my kids were coming home from a dance. Someone else was driving, and they got in a really bad car crash. And they tried to pass a snow plow. This boy did, and it spun around and hit a big telephone pole and basically split the car in half. And it went right between my two daughters, and my son was on the opposite side. So both girls ended up having emergency surgery and stuff like that. My son was unhurt, but it was like an eye opener. It was only a mile from our house,
Mhm.
and it just kind of told me I could have lost my family there, and I'm traveling all over the place. So I decided pretty right after that. I called the fighters and said, "Look, I'm not going to travel anymore. I'll go to world title fights and things, but the days of me being gone 20 days out of the month, those are over."
Mhm.
And then I think my daughter was my oldest was a sophomore in high school. So a sophomore, eighth grader, and a sixth grader. And I decided from that point on, I was going to work more with my family and not just keep driving. I was quite a workaholic.
As a father, I can't imagine what it's like getting that phone call. I've got goosebumps. That's the
Well,
scariest thing in the world.
we didn't get a phone call. I mean, we're sitting at home. My wife comes home from Chicago. Had gone shopping with friends, and she goes, "Where are the kids?" And I go, "I don't know, but when they get home, there's going to be a butt chewing because I've been calling them on the cell phone. No one's answering. I didn't get them cell phones to ignore me." And then
Mhm.
Misty started calling. She got my son, who said, "We're in a crash. Paige has already been taken away by ambulance." And we freak out. She says, "Give the phone to an adult." And one of the EMTs told him what hospital. And we jumped in the car and took off. And you can't be any more scared at that point. And then we drove past the car that's all mangled and even more
Mhm.
mangled than it was because they used the jaws of life to get them out.
Mhm.
I mean, this thing is destroyed, and now we're freaking out. We didn't talk, in the beginning. I'm like, they didn't airlift them, so that's a good sign. I'm trying to keep my wife calm. And after that, the rest of the way, probably 10 minutes, we didn't talk. We just went in. We go into the hospital and say our kids are here, and she goes, which one? And we name them all, and they go, we didn't know they were related. So they were all in different rooms, and one daughter is already on her. She's being taken to surgery at that point. The other one is all covered in blood, and I mean, it's just what a horrible time. But
Man.
small, kind of a small town. We knew the doctor who was there. We knew, there's another doctor that I coached basketball with. It was, as soon as they heard who they were, we knew lots of people in the hospital and things like that. But it turned out actually the guy that came back and helped them and stuff is the guy that flies the chopper for the airlifting, and he came up to us later on and said, boy, I'm so glad your kids were okay and such.
What what were the extent of the injuries, and how are they now? Have they recovered fully?
Well, my oldest had a lot of internal bleeding. She had some broken ribs and lacerated. No, my middle daughter had a lacerated liver and a torn abdominal wall.
Mm.
My one up front was she lost her spleen and some ribs, so she was bleeding internally badly. The other one, they said they thought she didn't wear a seatbelt, but it was actually the seatbelt that caused the abdominal tear and stuff. So we found out later. She said, "No, I was wearing it." But they both had to be cut from their chest to their navel
Mhm.
and such. But they're fine. My middle daughter had her eye socket shattered and messed up, and she's still not never like her eyesight will never be normal and stuff. Although we've had she had a couple surgeries, but she's okay now. But can never be a police officer or a pilot, or there's lots of things she can't do because
Right.
of her eye.
Well, man, you have some tough kids, and I'm really I'm really glad that the story turned out well. That's
Yeah.
terrifying. I can't imagine that. How long did you? I'm assuming it was a while before you went back to work. How long a time did it take before
Oh, I
things
don't
started
think
to
I
come back to
took
normal?
off more than a week. I mean, they were in the hospital a lot. So my
Mhm.
wife was up there, taking turns. Because of the age difference, one daughter was in one side of the hospital and one in the other. They wouldn't put them together. And so you had to kind of
Okay.
take turns with them and stuff. But she handled that. I mean, that she's the, she was used to having the kids. I was always traveling and stuff. And I continued to work and such, but just didn't do the traveling, that I used to do.
That's crazy. You're a tough guy. I'd be balling all over the place telling that story, Monty.
I've told it quite a few times now, so it's so
Whew,
that believe me,
I've had goosebumps.
I have a tougher time telling stories about fighters that have passed away and stuff like that, But I don't
I
want
won't get
I'm
into any
not
of
looking
that.
to cry on here, but I do have trouble with that.
Um, I want to ask you some questions, a little lighter subject. These are questions that I bet no one's ever asked you in an interview before, hopefully. Um, I'd like you to pick one or the other and maybe give me a reason why. Is that all right?
Sure,
Okay. Pulled pork or brisket?
that's a tough one. I like brisket best if it doesn't have a lot of fat in it. I don't. I'm not a fat person. I always like the pulled pork, but
Hmm.
if the brisket is right, I go with the brisket.
Have you ever had some good burn ends?
I have. I have.
Okay. I'm a
We have.
pulled pork guy. It's more versatile.
I've lived all over, so I've tried a lot of stuff. I didn't get up to be 350 pounds at one time by missing meals.
If you're ever in Fayetteville, Arkansas, give me a call. I smoke world champion barbecue all day.
Nice.
I'll hook you up with some good grub, man.
All right.
All right. Tyson versus Ali, and both in their primes.
Wow. It's just so hard. It's like picking someone who won the NBA championship in the 90s and now. It's
Hmm.
the athletes are different. They're bigger, they're faster and all that. I think you can see the thing behind me. I'm a big Ali fan. That's
Me too.
my thing. But Tyson was amazing. I mean, just amazing. We'd never seen anything like it.
Hmm.
Um, Both at their prime, I go with Tyson. I think Tyson. I think at some point he connects.
I think it's a great debate because every person that can argue for Tyson can also argue for Ali. I
Exactly.
really, you can argue for both and be right. All right.
Decision goes to Ali if it's a decision. Knockout
Sure.
goes to Tyson.
Yeah. Coffee or energy drinks?
I had one drink of coffee when I was in ninth grade, and I've never drank it since.
Okay.
So energy drinks, they keep me awake while I'm driving.
Awesome. Okay. Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee?
You know, I never. I kind of missed the Bruce Lee period. Chuck Norris, I know, was a real kickboxer. I mean, a real professional fighter. I'm not as sure. I mean, Bruce Lee did amazing things and stuff, and what I've seen, but I don't know. I really don't know that much history about him. That what he actually did in competition, and so that reason, I'm going to go with Chuck.
All right. Uh, if you're going on vacation, do you prefer snowy mountain resort or cruise ship?
Hmm. Um, I've actually, my wife and I have only gone on one cruise, and we had two people have like heart attacks on the boat, and they had
Oh
to stop
no.
it and come out with helicopters and take them back, and it kind of ruined the whole trip. My oldest daughter lives in Denver, and we love the mountains, so I'm going to go with the mountain thing. Although I don't ski anymore, but I do like the mountains.
Awesome. I'm right there with you. Everybody I know likes going to the beach. Take me up to Alaska and put me in a cabin on a hill for a weekend. I'd be much happier. All right. When you are watching fighting, do you prefer to watch a striking match or a grappling match?
Because I think of my boxing background, um, I prefer the stand up, but I enjoy the ground. I'm a wrestling fan, so I manage Jared Brooks, one of the best wrestlers in the sport, and he's not boring. I mean,
Right.
he suplexes, slams, moves around. He just won the interim one title with a rear choke over an Olympian. So I mean, those fights I like. If you're gonna take people down, do something with them.
Yeah.
I mean, pass guard, go to half guard, land blows, but don't body head.
Yeah.
I was saying that all the way back in '96.
Yeah. Okay. GSP or Anderson Silva?
In their prime, you're saying?
Hmm. Yeah. The one we missed.
I consider myself a friend with GSP. I've known him. I saw his very first pro fight up in
Oh,
Canada.
wow.
Anderson, beat up on Rich Franklin twice. Cost me a lot of money. Um, um, man, oh,
GSP.
man. Over the whole course of their career, I'm going with GSP.
That's another Ali Tyson one. You can argue for both.
For sure.
Okay. Your favorite fighter to watch ever? Who's your favorite fighter?
Seen so many and had so many. I'm going to say Jens Pulver.
Awesome.
Love Jens, one of my best friends. Boy, I like to watch him fight.
Me too. What's the biggest way that fighters have changed in your career?
Well, when I first started, fighters would get hurt. Everyone gets hurt training and stuff. If someone broke a hand, they hid it behind their back from me. They wouldn't let me see it because they didn't want me to take them out of the fight. Nowadays, I think there's a lot of guys that just like the idea of being fighters. They
Okay.
like that it draws girls. They like that they get attention. But if you tell them, hey, sorry, you're never going to fight again, they go, oh, okay. Where the old time guys wasn't like that. They wanted to fight. Got a great story for you.
Okay.
Laverne Clark was in the UFC.
Mhm.
He was 3-0. He's going to fight Fabiano Iha in a rematch. Calls me up and says, Monty, I'm going to wear shoes for this fight. And I go, nope, can't do that. I go, Fabiano, he's a submission guy. He'll use your shoe against you. He'll get an ankle lock or knee bar. He goes, no, I'm going to wear shoes. I go, not going to let you do that. He goes, come to the gym. I go to the gym, and he's working out. He's got shoes on, but one shoe's bigger than the other, obviously. So he goes, let's go in the back. He takes his shoe off, and his feet are just a bloody mess. His foot wrapped in toilet paper. His toes are the size of potatoes. What the hell? I go, what happened? Said he was using a lawnmower, and he had a rope on it, and he was lowering it down a hill and pulling it up, and he slipped, and his foot went under the lawnmower, and it chopped off the tips of all his toes, and it hit the big toe and split it down the middle. It was, and he just tied it up with like a rubber band and toilet paper, and his fight was a week away, and he fought. He wouldn't do
With
that.
a shoe? Did he have the shoe on during the fight?
And he got ankle lock.
Well, there you go. A lesson to young fighters.
Yeah.
What would you tell up and coming fighters who are just wanting to get into MMA? Maybe some warnings or some tips.
My big thing is amateur MMA is a really good thing. It's a chance to learn. It's a chance to take chances, make mistakes that don't cost you.
Mm-hmm.
I used to tell guys all the time. You know what Rich Franklin's amateur record was? And they say no, and I said neither does anyone else. Because it doesn't matter. No one cares. It's he had amateur fights, but we don't care. It use the amateurs to develop your skills. If your striking is weak, work on that in the amateurs. If you got to get better at jiu-jitsu, do that. Don't turn pro until you're ready. There's no rush.
Sure.
And if you do turn pro, and if you get a promoter or manager that's feeding you, warm bodies just to beat up, that doesn't prepare you for your first real fight either. So
Yeah.
once I turned the guys pro, I was ready. They were ready to take on whoever. We didn't pick and choose. Matt Hume told me one time I sent Spencer Fisher and Jens Pulver out to Seattle to train with Matt, and they came back and they go, "Thanks for nothing." And I go, "What?" And he go, "Oh, we learned a lot. We learned how to tap with our right hand, tap with our left hand." So he goes, "Monty," and then Jens goes, "Monty." He goes, "We're getting tapped by amateurs. Amateurs." They were pissed. And I call Matt up and I go, "Matt, what happened?" He goes, "Well, they kind of ran into a couple of my." He goes, "They're amateurs, but they've been with me for like 5 years or more." He goes, "They're really, really talented." And I said, "Well, why don't you put them in the UFC?" He goes, "I'm going to." He goes, "But when I put them in, I'm going to unleash them. The people are going to say, 'Where did this person come from?' They're going to be 100% ready." And that was Mighty Mouse,
Ah,
who they
man,
unleashed, and they couldn't even find an opponent anymore. And I consider Matt Hume one of the best strategists and
amazing.
in the game. And
Hmm.
I learned a lot from that. I said, okay, we're going to unleash him. And that's kind of the road I took. Was we would get our guys had so many more fights. By the time we got in the UFC, we'd have guys like Matt Hughes at 28-1 going
Hmm.
against guys 6-1, things like that. And
Yeah.
all that experience, that's how he was able to jump in there and just start killing everyone but Hallman. Had trouble with that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Old Dennis. No more pink shorts, please, Dennis. Or pink Speedo or whatever that was. Um, let's see here. I wanted to. I did something a little different with this interview. I've never done it before. Um, I know you have more amazing stories than there are minutes in our lifetime to tell, and I didn't want to just ask you about some of the ones I had heard. So, because of you, I've got to interview a lot of fighters. So I reached out to people who worked with you, or who were managed by you or promoted by you, and asked them to maybe give me a few words of something that happened once that I could bring up that maybe you could tell about, maybe through their eyes, their memory, but the people that were there when it happened. And I kind of had to just write this down as they were telling it. So if it takes me a minute to put it together, it's because it's all anyway. All right. I spoke to John Hackelman about you. Um, he said he never really worked directly with you, but what he knew about you to be true was that you were a very nice and humble man. So there you go. John Hackelman
Yeah,
thinks a lot of you.
I say the same about him. We never did work together, which is odd because we were in it so much.
Hmm.
But he was on the other side of the country.
Sure. Okay. Another guy who you didn't manage, but who fought for your promotions many, many times. I spoke with Sean Salmon about you. Um, he said that he remembered going to a fight, and I wasn't sure if he was saying that the promotion forgot to pay for his hotel or he forgot to pay for his hotel. But regardless, you pulled $300 out of your wallet and handed it to him so to cover the cost of the room. Asked him if he and his wife needed food or anything like that. He always thought that was really, really nice of you, and he wanted to say that. He also wanted to thank you for pulling a guy off of a roof on a day's notice to go to fight him.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, tell me about that story. He said
Well,
thank you for that.
first of all, I want my 300 back. But I obviously was intoxicated. But no, I had a guy that fought for me named John Tybal,
Okay.
and John didn't win much, maybe once. But he was a guy that would fight on if he's in the crowd, he'll come out, right. And I had run out of anyone to fight. I didn't have anyone. I said, you know who will do it? John Tybal will do it. I called him. He was living in Michigan. We were in Iowa. He was putting on a roof, and I said the fight's tomorrow. And he jumped off and grabbed his stuff and showed up and fought. I mean, he was the best.
And he did not pick up his second win.
No.
Okay. I spoke to Spencer Fisher
Mm.
yesterday. I'm supposed to ask you about the message that was sent to the wrong person when you were in Hawaii.
All right. So I'm there, and TJ Thompson, who did Super Brawl and Icon, he's my best friend,
Hmm.
and we're out there. My wife's there, and Spencer's there, and Robbie Lawler, everybody, and TJ didn't know that Spencer was married. He did. That was his first time out there, and he said, "Monty," he goes, "one of these ring girls really is after Spencer Fisher." She goes, he goes, "Why don't you tell him, come on over here?" And he goes, let's, she'll be very nice to him. And I said, I go, I don't think so. I go, but I'll send him the message. So I type it up and say, "Hey, TJ says this ring girl's after you, blah blah blah. He's just saying he's inviting you over." And I sent it. And as soon as I hit it, I went, "Oh no." I go, "I have two Spencer Fishers, but one of them is Emily, because Emily fought for me too." And I went, "Oh my gosh." I go, "Miss, you got to call Emily and tell her that this is a mistake. That Spencer's not doing anything wrong." And she did, but it didn't really work. I went to Spencer. He was sitting with Robbie at a Japanese restaurant. And I go, "Dude," he goes, "What?" And I go, I messed up." He goes, "Oh no, what'd you do?" And I told him what I did. He goes, "I'm a dead man." He goes, "I'm a dead man." And then Robbie's laughing. "Oh," he goes, "He's dead." He's dead. And, I know he caught a bunch of grief when he got home, but
Yeah,
he didn't do anything wrong.
I I've been in a similar situation and sent the wrong message or the right
Oh,
message to the wrong person. That's no fun. Okay, let's see. Jens wanted me to ask you if you still try to pass semi trucks that
I
are
knew
throwing
this was
snow
coming.
everywhere.
We were coming back from a show, and I think I had Jens, Jeremy Horn, Matt Hughes, all in the car with me, and I drove everywhere. I drove us all over the Midwest, and
Hmm.
it's snowing out pretty heavy, and there's a semi, and he's going real slow. But when you pass the semi, when you hit those back wheels, you get white out, but it only
Hmm.
lasts for like a second, and then you get
Yeah.
past them, you're okay. Then you got to do it again in the front. So I go, I'm going to do this, and I boom take off, and I'm white out, white out, white out, and I'm going, "Oh my god, white out!" It's not breaking, and I
Hmm.
I panic. I can't go. I got to make sure I don't go right. I'll go under the semi. So I kind of angle to the left, and I'm going, and then all of a sudden I feel it, and I just throw my arms in the air, and I go, "I lost it," and I just let it go. And the car goes down the embankment all the way down to the bottom. And the Jen's like, "What do you mean you lost? You can't just throw your hands off the wheel." And I go, "Nothing. I was sliding. Nothing I could do." But we end up okay on the bottom, and they started trying to dig us out, and I got flying down all through the snow, and I had to get back up the embankment, and then I realized I'm running right into a cement barricade across. They have a cross, and I'm
Hmm.
going to ram that thing. So I turned the wheel as fast as I could, and I shot into the air and landed right on the edge of the highway, and just yelled at the guys, "Let's go!" And it's like they are running after me, jump in the car, and we head home.
I wonder how much you could sell a video of the inside of that car during that experience.
Oh yeah, crazy.
uh, okay. I think this is the last one I have from any of the guys. Oh no, wait, I have two more. Uh, Matt told me that he and you actually medically diagnosed Jens Pulver with split personality disorder.
Well, multiple personalities. Split would
Okay,
be a
there we
little
go.
too. Yeah, we would ride around with Jens, and you'd hear him. I got a call, and he didn't want to fight Dennis Hallman because they were high school rivals, and he goes, I'm the champ. I don't want to make I don't want him to get any glory off of me,
Sure.
any recognition. I'm not going to fight him. I get the call, and I go, "Jens, they want you to fight Hallman." He goes, "No way, I ain't doing it. I'm not fighting him. I'll take my belt and put it in the garbage." but I'll knock him out. That's what I'll do. I'll knock his ass out, but I ain't fighting him. I ain't fighting him. There's no way I'm fighting him. I will knock him out. I'm telling you, I will knock him out. And Matt and I are just looking at each other. Matt starts going, cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. And that's what we said. Every time Jens would argue with us, so we cuckoo. We go, hey, we turn around. Will the four of you guys shut up? We're trying to do something. It's just Jens alone.
Man, I bet you guys had so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
The last guy that I spoke to was Jeremy Horn.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. He said that you and some of the guys were over in Japan for one of the Rings shows. And then he asked me if I was aware how small hotel rooms were in Japan. And then he shared a little story with me about Matt and Mark.
Matt, just Matt.
Okay. Do you mind? Well, he told me that Mark also did it.
No.
Okay.
It was just Matt. Matt did it twice.
Oh, that's even worse.
So we show up and we're over there. A bunch of us. We're seeing 3 great MMA shows in a 10-day period. We're seeing a ring show, a Shudo show, their big one, and a Pride show. And I mean, it was Henderson and oh my gosh, Vanderlei Silva fights. Amazing. It was, one of them was the Fedor's loss to TK where he got cut. Great shows. So we get to one hotel, and Motoko Yoshida passed away. She was my partner, and she wanted to talk to me. Well, somehow Matt gets into my tiny little closet of a room and takes a big dump and leaves it there. Doesn't flush, right? So he comes down. He's a farm kid. That's funny to him.
Sure. Yeah.
Sometimes the heads of the goats just get caught in the fence. It just happens.
Yeah. Cow tipping.
And so we go off to the fights. Come back. It's like 1 a.m, and Motoko wants to talk some more. And so he sneaks up and puts a layer on top of his layer, so that he told me it was 5 inches out of the water. Well, a couple hours later, I decide it's time for bed. It's 3 a.m. I go upstairs. I open the door, and I can't even put a foot in. It's, oh my God. And I shut the door. And I'm like, oh my God. I go downstairs. I talk to this big guy at the desk. I'm trying to explain. He doesn't speak English. And I go, one of my friends thinks it's funny to poop in my toilet, blah, blah, blah. And he's full. We full. And I said, no, come with me. Follow. Took him up there. He opened the door and walked in. He comes out. He goes, okay. And he gave me a new room. And as I'm headed to my room, I see 3 little Japanese guys with yellow hard hats and plungers going in a line, marching down to fix the Matt Hughes deal.
Now, in that moment, did you know Matt was responsible, or did you just think that's how the room was when you got there? Okay. There's some great stories. I could listen to this forever. Because I try to reach people who are going through hard times with these interviews, if you had to give a message, because you've shared your struggles from working with fighters, you've seen every kind of struggle there is on this planet. What's a message you could share with people who are going through hard times that maybe need a little inspiration?
Boy, I mean, I just think there's every time you think that things are bad, there's always people that are worse off. And anytime I feel things are going against me or I'm having a difficulty, I think to other people that are really struggling all over the world and stuff like that. And it just tells me, that you have it inside of you to overcome any obstacle, and you just have to believe in yourself, and you can do it. And we've all been down bad, and you gotta, the people who get through it are the ones that don't give up, that just keep fighting, a little bit at a time, day after day, and before you know it, you've made it.
I think a lot of people worry about where they want to be and how not to get there, or not how to get there.
Yeah.
All right. Besides granting interviews to little guys in Arkansas and being an awesome advocate for fighters, what else do you have going on in your life today?
Well, I do have my book. I have the Full Monty, which is on Amazon. It's a lot of these stories. in there, 400 pages and stuff like that of all the beginning things. I mean, stuff that even if you're a fighter, you've never heard these stories. You know, you might heard a few, but not
Hmm.
160 of them like is in the book.
Wow.
So still messing with that a little bit. I recently decided to get back in shape, and like I said, at one time I was 355. I'm now
Whew.
235. So I've lost
Congratulations.
120 pounds over the course, but about 75 pounds in the last 5 months. And did it just by um, got off my butt and started walking. I can't really run at my
Mhm.
age well, and so I walk, once to three times a day, and I started lifting again to get that feel. And I do a protein shake in the morning, and I do chicken breasts and vegetables at night, and I've stuck to it, no snacking, and I've just watched the weight just come off, and I'm like a whole different person. I had diabetes too; it's basically gone. My
Wow.
A1C dropped in half. I can now, because I walk so much, my energy level is so much higher. I can do more things with my wife. I didn't even like going to Target with my wife because she walked all over the place and I get tired. Or we go to a mall and I sit and go, come back, go do your thing, come back. Now I can do things with her and stuff. So yeah, that's really the big focus right now for me. And then still putting on boxing events and some MMA events, and just trying to keep my foot in there a little bit.
Awesome. What is the best way for friends, family, fans of yours to keep up with you and what you have going on these days?
I got hacked with my Facebook page, and there are people out there trying saying I'm selling stuff and all that. It's all hackers, but I do have a real page, and it's one with about, I used to have 5,000 max, the friends, and now I'm
Hmm.
at around 700 or 800. But that is my real page, and uh, I post a lot on Facebook still.
Me too. That's how I found you. Or well, actually, Kevin.
Yep.
Kevin introduced us. That's right. I've found so many people just through Facebook that at this point I can't remember any other way. Um, I'm out of questions, Monty.
All
Thank
right.
you very much for granting me this interview, um, for helping me talk to other fighters, for being a friend. I've known you long enough now, and we've had enough conversations that I feel friendly towards you. You're not just a guy on the phone. Thank you very much for coming on here. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, thanks for having me. I really like the question, the story thing from the other guys. That's a neat idea. I like it.
It took me a little while. I didn't finish writing stuff up until halfway through work today, which I didn't even think I was going to have to go to work. I got called in. So I'm
Oh,
at work trying to pull meat out of a smoker, writing things down. So yeah, I enjoyed that too. And the guys, they all said hello. They all had great things to say to you. They said more than that about you, but
sure.
those were the stories. It takes about a minute per minute to upload this. When it's done, I'll send it over to you.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you again, Monty. I hope to talk to you soon, man.
All right. Bye.
Thanks.